Bob Flax here. I play things with strings, I hit stuff and I sing, and today I'm excited to show you something that I recently bought, which was an interesting choice given the things that I say that I do. I play things with strings and I hit stuff and I sing. I guess this technically counts as hitting stuff. Okay, the elephant in the room. Ta-da! I have behind me a beautiful brand new synthesizer. This is the Novation Summit. Now, if you watched my last YouTube video, I did a video talking about the Electro-Harmonix microsynth, and in general, I've been on kind of a synthesizer kick for a while now. I started getting into synths when I discovered that I could use some of their tools to shape the sound of my violin, and I've been playing in a band called Billy Wilder where I play both violin and synthesizers. Most of what I've been playing in Billy Wilder has been this stuff up here. That's my iPad running various soft synths. That little, how do I point to this? That little orange and yellow colored thing is the Moog Siren. That was a really exciting development for me, and I'm usually controlling both of them with this little white mini keyboard up there. That's the Arturia Keystep. Now, I'm at a point in my keyboard skills development where, after a bunch of gigs with Billy Wilder and playing on this little dinky keyboard, used to be on an even smaller MIDI keyboard, but this only has a few octaves. So I'm kind of wondering, what can I do to up my piano skills, my keyboard game? And one of the things I need is a full key bed where I can play spread voicings and learn how to do that stuff. I've never had to learn that. There's no such thing as spread voicings on a violin. You could play 2 notes, maybe 3 at most, and that's kind of as far as it goes. Guitar, I'm getting into more and more voicings on the guitar, but again, there's a limit to what you can play, and I know that at some point, if I want to be a producer and make my own music, I'd like to be able to understand a keyboard. I'd like to have something that has MIDI capability that I could use with other synths that I already own, and maybe pair up with some stuff on the iPad. But also, I just want to understand how synthesis works. I want to understand filters better and LFOs. If you've seen any of the videos I've made about the Empress Zoya pedal, this is also a big factor in why I'm getting into synthesizers, because Zoya is a modular synth in a box. So I thought today I would show you what I've done with this since it arrived. It's been about a week and a half since it arrived, and you can see it in the background of that last video, and I hadn't plugged it in yet. As soon as I finished editing that microsynth video, I plugged this in, turned it on, and went through all of the presets and the default stock factory patches just to see what they are and to see if I could understand how they work and what they do. Made my list of my top 100 or so favorites, because there's so many good sounds. There's so many good sounds. And then I modified a few of them, and then I started making some patches from scratch. So I thought today I would show you my first 5 presets that I've made. I bought this not just for keyboard learning, but also I'm an accompanist. I play for ballet classes, and usually I'm playing in a ballet studio where there is a piano. I've gotten my piano technique up bit by bit, year by year, as I play for ballet classes a couple times a week in the morning. And I thought, if I'm going to be playing for ballet classes remotely, I need to have something that I can play piano sounds on. So, first attempt was to try and make a patch that would kind of sound like a piano. It's surprisingly hard. Here's my first patch that I made. This is called Shiny Piano. Now right away you'll notice that a couple things happened. First, it doesn't really sound like a piano. It's really hard to make a piano sound. Piano is a complex acoustic instrument that has a jillion resonating strings that are interacting with each other in complex ways. This has 3 oscillators, and it's pretty advanced. I bought the Summit because it kind of hits the sweet spot for me between analog and digital. They're digitally controlled oscillators running through an analog filter section. So, if I tweak some knobs on here, you'll start to hear the different sounds that it could be. Right? Just playing these sounds, maybe I'll jump up an octave. It does something that pianos don't do, which is it's sustaining pretty much indefinitely. It's a lower volume than a note that I play. Sort of dies off. And then stays at this sustain rate until I release the keys. And then it fades away. That means it has an attack, a decay to the sustain level where it sustains, and then release. I can control all of these parameters with the amp envelope. Put that on screen right now. Close-up of the amp envelope, ADSR. This is a really common thing in synthesizers. Every synthesizer has some kind of envelope that controls the shape of the sound. You'll notice there's another thing that happened. When I push down hard, something changed. This keyboard has something called Aftertouch, which a lot of synthesizers and keyboards have, but you can kind of push down the note and then push it down even further. And there's a second level of stuff going on, and depending how hard you push down, it changes some parameter more or less. Now I have this Aftertouch parameter controlling a couple things. It opens up the filter a little bit, and it adds a little vibrato, and it's doing that using an LFO. There are 4 LFOs on this machine, and you can assign all 4 of them to control whatever you want. So you could have one of them modulating the other LFO, and that creates some complex wiggly interactions. You could have them controlling the filter, you could have them controlling the pitch, which is what I did there, that's vibrato. You also have 2 standard wheels, like on most keyboards, a pitch wheel and a modulation wheel, or a mod wheel for short. Right now, the pitch wheel, if I press a note, has a bend range of a full octave, which could be kind of fun. Maybe not that useful for a piano sound, but could be useful for lots of other things. Especially if you put on like a kind of synthesizer lead sound, that could be a really useful expressive control to do pitch bends and slides, things that I do on a violin without thinking about, but very useful here in the synthesizer land, and you could do this for multiple notes at once, which is much harder to do on a stringed instrument. The other one, the mod wheel, I have set up to do this. So it's kind of brightening a little bit, but that's actually not using the filter, that's using a ring modulation control. There's a ring control here, and I don't fully understand exactly what it's doing, but sort of it takes oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 and lightly smashes them together, and it creates new harmonics and sort of brighter, chimier overtones. So it also behaves differently depending on the pitch of oscillator 1 and 2. So if I do that down here, not much. A little more sparkly up there. And there's still Aftertouch. So all of a sudden, just from a very simple, kind of bland electric piano sound, I can get much more interesting sounds right away from these. Now, the other thing that really made me excited about the Summit is these Animate buttons. So you can assign each of these to sort of be a momentary effect. I'm thinking of these as like turning on a pedal, and I just press a button and it changes some parameters. All of that can be controlled and assigned in the modulation matrix. Cut to a better camera angle. Okay, so check this out. Each of these Animate buttons I have assigned in this patch to do something interesting. You can hear it added a little bit of delay. If I take that away, no repeats, no echoes. So I have used that in a kind of subtle way. Now, you can also press that and then the hold button, and now that's permanently on, so this hand is free to do other stuff. I'm getting pretty good at quickly pressing both the 1 and the hold button so that I can sort of leave it permanently on. But I like that I can either have it as a momentary effect or as a permanent thing that stays on until I decide to turn it off. Nice. Animate 2, I have doing a washy reverb. You might also hear a little bit of noise, white noise, sort of a extra little rasp in there, right? Even before the reverb and the long, echoey decay kicks in, there's a little bit of extra noise. And there is, in fact, a dedicated control on here just for how much of the noise oscillator I play. If I turn that up, listen. So I dialed that in just a little tiny bit as the bass level. And when I turn on Animate 2, it really cranks that up. If I go to my mod matrix, I can see all of the different little effects that I've added to customize and tweak this. So the first thing I did was the mod wheel, brings up the ring level. This one is mod envelope 1 is controlling the pitch, meaning that it's actually shaping the pitch a little bit. It just shoots up a little bit and then curls back down, which you might not notice. It's set very subtly, probably because the envelope is set very subtly, but it just adds a little different shaping to the start of the note, which is kind of like how a percussive strike on a piano might work. When you hit a string, it starts out by going a little sharp and then gradually drifts back. So that's a subtle tweak, but I like that I can make that kind of control. Okay, the filter frequency is controlled by LFO2, and that's done by Animate 1. So that was when I press this Animate button. You can hear it's brightening just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. Okay? The mod wheel is opening up the filter as well as doing the ring, so that's part of the brightening. It's a combined effect. Both are subtle on their own, but together it's really a nice, pleasing thing. Animate 1 also controls the LFO3, which is controlling the LFO2 rate. So when I press this button, it's also making LFO3 kind of tweak out a little bit depending on how LFO3 is set. It's set really slow, so it's just gradually increasing and decreasing that LFO2 rate. What is LFO2 controlling again? Oh yes, the filter frequency. So something you almost can't tell over time, and maybe I'm just going overboard and filling up all the mod matrix slots with like, let's make this control that, and I don't know how much of it is really useful, but it's kind of cool that you can add up all these things and over time they make a more complex and interesting sound. It's a fully playable new instrument. What else do I have in here? Okay, Aftertouch is controlling the filter frequency. We already said that one. I also have LFO1 based on Aftertouch controlling the pitch. That's the vibrato. Okay, so it's filter and vibrato. We said that already. Mod envelope 2 is controlling the filter frequency. Okay, so it's kind of jumping a little bit and starts out brighter and then darkens as the note decays. And then with Animate 2, I bring up the noise level. I said that one. Mod envelope 2 by velocity changes the filter frequency. Okay, so this is another one. These are velocity sensitive keys. So if I hit it softer, it'll change a little bit. I'm not a particularly skilled keyboardist, so I'm trying to really exaggerate that. But it's also only doing a little tiny bit of change, so that's probably fine. And then we've got the filter frequency changing relative to the pitch at a negative amount, which means that the filter opens up the lower on the keyboard I go. So up here, it's pretty closed, and it opens up a little bit down here, which is nice because you hear more of the attack of the note, and it's a little brighter for otherwise dark things. The result is it sounds balanced and even all the way across the keyboard. That's a nice subtle tip. And then I'm out. Those are all unused. There's also the modulation matrix, which has 4 more slots. That's how I'm controlling the reverb and decay level. I also have a distortion level that is negatively spread across the keyboard, so there's more distortion down here and less up here, so that you get nice beefy bottom end. So using a few different controls there. This is the delay level and amount of modulation slots. Okay, so that is the end of my first patch, Shiny Piano. Let's take a look at the next one I made. This one is called Hello Juno, and it actually started out as a preset. There's one in the factory banks called Juniper, and right away I went, aha, I bet this is based off of the Roland Juno and Jupiter keyboards. So let's have a listen to that. Very different sound already. Now on my oscillators, it'll show what kind of oscillator is being used. If I go back to the previous patch, this one says more, which means it's some kind of wavetable. This one says sine, and this one says more, so it's some kind of wavetable. And I could go in and actually look and see what they were on that first one. The first oscillator was called harsh. The third wavetable was called octaves, and collectively I can control the levels of them with individual knobs. So if I go back now to my second patch, Hello Juno, they're all set to saws. I don't know if that's even on screen. It's not. But they're all saw waves, and that's kind of typical of 80s pads, you know? What a great sound. I have this mod knob doing vibrato. The pitch bend is still set to do an octave. Let's see what I've set these Animate buttons to do now. Turn on Animate 1. Nice and bright. Animate 2. All of a sudden we've got a wobbling. It's an LFO, low frequency oscillator. That's a slow wave. It's not fast enough to be audible, right? That always confused me at the beginning. It's a wave. It's a wiggling amount. It's a modulation source. It modulates something. It's modulating the filter cutoff point. So it's opening and closing the filter. Turn off Animate 2 and that goes away. Turn on them both. It's brighter, so that filter is starting at a brighter place. Nice. Okay. What does this sound like if I open up the filter manually? Because there is a big honkin' filter knob. It is literally the largest knob on this device, and I love that. Now that's set to be a really smooth opening, and there doesn't appear to be much resonance. There's pretty low resonance. If I turn up the filter resonance, let's crank that. Now let's do the same thing. Sweet sounds. Also, there's two different kinds of filters. There's a 12 dB per octave, which really cuts off the frequency pretty gently, or I can do a 24 dB per octave. Let me turn the resonance all the way back down to where it was at the default. There we go, match the patch. You can hear it has a different quality. It's sort of a steeper drop off. And if I crank the resonance now, it gets crazy. So really, really interesting filter controls on here. And I love that even if this preset patch was not exactly what I need in the moment, let's say I want to have a more laser beam sweepy sound, I can just jump and change that right away. Poof, done. If I go back and reset the patch. It took seconds for me to make that change. I'm finally understanding synthesizers, and I love that the Summit has one knob per function for the most part. So if I want to change something, there's probably a knob for it that I can tweak in real time. I find that very exciting for live playing, and as an improviser, I want to be able to interact with all the controls in real time and not have to go into menus and dive. However, I can sit here for an hour and tweak the sound by menu diving. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Okay, let's move on. Next patch. This one is called Hammin Organ. And I kind of discovered this sound by accident. I was setting out to, I don't know what I was setting out to do, but I was tweaking some of the waves, and I accidentally stumbled across something with the filter. I set it to be very resonant, and all of a sudden it was making a note of its own. And I figured out if I push the pre-filter overdrive and a little bit of post-filter distortion, it was this really nice chimey bell-like thing. So the result, after I committed to that sound, oh, and also I figured out that I could give it a little bit of click on the start of each note by having the one of the mod envelopes controlling the filter resonance and just giving it a little bit of extra. And with a loop of that, it just gave a little. Anyway, here's my Hammin Organ sound. Yes, there's a button called Key Latch that's really designed for the arpeggiator. If you turn on the arpeggiator and play a few notes, now with Key Latch, it'll just play those notes forever until I play some new notes. So that's kind of cool, but the Key Latch also works as kind of a cheap sustain pedal. I should just buy a sustain pedal so I could play it like a piano and sustain the notes. Anyway, pretty convincing Hammond organ sound if you asked me. If I were playing a live set and I had to pull up a B3 sound, I would use this in a heartbeat and not at all be upset that it doesn't quite sound right. Okay, it's getting dark in here. Let's give it a little more light. This one I set up with a square wave, a Moore, it's called octaves, and there's a wave shape so I can kind of sweep through one of these wave tables and find the sweet spot. And then I've got a saw on the third one, and each of them is set in different oscillator ranges, which kind of mimics the way that an organ has like multiple stops. And just to hammer that home, I added a couple more Animate buttons that sort of increase the stops, right? So if I go into my mod matrix here, Animate 1 opens up the filter a little bit. Animate 2 brings up oscillator 3, which I guess was muted otherwise. Where's it at? Well, it's currently at 40, so it's very low, right? If I really bring that up by hand, you can hear it's kind of a sub-octave kind of flavor. I'm just lazy and don't feel like resetting everything, so I'll just jump back to the preset. I like that all of the controls are digital. So if I change to a preset, even if I haven't reset the knobs, but all of the parameters jump back to where I've saved them. So that's really handy, and I'm getting the hang of saving a preset and keeping the knobs where they are. This is a whole MIDI thing, right? The position of the knob does not actually reflect what's saved. So if you want to change something, you can see on the screen as I do that, now it matches, right? But if I'm lazy, I'll just change the preset and jump back. Okay, so back to the mod matrix. What am I doing here? Changes the filter distortion, again a negative amount, trying to balance the registers so they sound about the same. Mod envelope 2 is changing the VCA level. Oh, that's mod envelope, so that's a ADSR thingy, not the mod wheel. Different things. Still getting the hang of this. Mod wheel I have controlling the mod envelope, okay, and then mod wheel controlling. So different parameters on the mod envelope. Oh, it's looping. That's right. I remember what I was doing here. I was trying to get that Leslie swirling sound, and so I set up the modulation envelope to open and close the volume, but if it's looping, it'll do that over and over again instead of just one time at the start of the note. So I have it going, you can hear it kind of here. You hear that swirling. It's also combining with a little bit of the chorus effect. I I have chorus set very slowly, so it's gradually drifting between the regular signal and a little bit of a vibrato wobbly one. So that, combined with the loudness and softness, to my ear kind of simulates a Leslie cabinet, which is a spinning rotary drum speaker. It's a speaker that's spinning around. And so that changes the pitch a little bit and also makes it louder and softer depending on if the horn is pointing at you. It's a Doppler effect thing. So this mod wheel, as I move it up, changes the speed of that looping up and down volume. Check it out. Nice. What else did I do? Animate 1, I have controlling the filter a little bit. And then I'm out of stuff. Okay, and then there's other stuff in the mod matrix here, controlling the chorus rate by this. Same goal, trying to make this wheel be the fast, slow control. I have just, that one's doing nothing. Oh, okay, so yeah, really limited controls here. What do I have doing Animate 2? Is it just bringing up oscillator 3 level? Wow, okay. So there's room to tweak this more and refine even further, but if let's turn on the Animates so you hear what they do. Nice and crunchy. It's not really that convincing as I jump up into the high register. You can kind of hear a little bit of digital sound that maybe I could tweak to be a little bit better. Okay, let's turn on the second stop, Animate 2. Nice sound. 80% convinced it's a real Hammond organ. Let's turn on them both. Down in the low end, that gets real rumbly real quick because this is a very low note with a sub-octave below it, so I should probably play a little bit higher. Not bad. It's a little bit artificial or metallic sounding. I gotta work on it. Anyway, that's patch number 2. Patch number 3 is almost the exact same thing. I just changed 2 parameters on the amp envelope. So instead of starting the note right away, it swells in. Sounds like this. So a little bit longer release time on that as well. The combination is potentially could use some tweaking, but it's sort of more of a pad rather than an organ, you know. I like that a real organ has a volume control. Maybe I could add that as another thing, but all of a sudden that sort of metallic chimey thing doesn't bother me because I'm no longer pretending to be a real instrument. It just feels like a robot. Nice. Good work, robot. I like your sounds. Okay. Then we've got a thing that I've titled Near Fisa. That is a play off of Fisa, which is a sort of classic combo organ. You've certainly heard this. Keyboard skills. Okay, let me open up this mod wheel a little bit. All the way open. Pretty cool. I had to check to see what was on my screen there. Sounds really nice. Let's see what the animate buttons do. Turn this all the way down. Okay. Animate 1. You heard it? Different amount of wiggle. It's a vibrato, but it's slower and beefier one, right? Without it, it's a fast little tiny wobble. With it, it's a bigger, wider, slower, almost drunken vibrato. I love that sound. I'm very excited about it. Okay, and Animate 2, what's that one doing? Now we've left the realm of pretending to be a Fisa. Again, I'm using real instruments as a point of departure and then going, what can I make with this? So Animate 2 here, let's see what it's doing. I go into my mod matrix and remember what I did. I'm looking for something that says Animate 2. Aha! FM 02 into 03. And that means that I am using frequency modulation. I'm having the second oscillator modulate the third oscillator. And anytime you're using FM in this way, and one of those oscillators is, well, they're both moving depending on what note you play. So this should make a dynamic effect that changes if I play low versus high. Let's have a listen. Might be more interesting if I open up the filter all the way. Oh, I didn't turn on the effect. Okay, here we go. Okay, that's really cool, right? So just with one tweak, right? This is changing one parameter, just changing the amount of FM from one oscillator to another, which again, I can do with a knob right on the front panel, but I have it saved as a thing that I do with just one button push. That's a cool keyboard sound, and I might use that in a song of mine, right? So I find that very inspiring. Okay, so now, at this point, we've seen the first 5 patches of mine. We've looked at my shiny piano patch, my Hello Juno take on the Juno thing. We've got my Hammin Organ. We've got my Hammin Organ but with a swell. We've got my Fisa clone. Right? What is that? The Doors song, right? If I could play piano better, I maybe would be able to do the rest of it. Okay, you get the idea. It's a very iconic sound of the 60s. And then, last but not least, you probably weren't expecting this sound to come out of here. But Rob, that sounds like a piano. Well, yeah, I cheated. Take a look. What I'm really doing is I'm using my iPad, and I have up here an app that's running a keyboard patch. And you'll notice that as I play here, it's triggering sounds there. I have a little bit of audio input coming out of my iPad. It's running into the back of the Summit, and I have these MIDI notes controlling the piano sound. So I finally got this set up today. It's not really a patch that I've made on Summit, but it's a nice reminder that if there's any sound I can't create on here, I probably already have it in my iPad. And I might be able to use things like, for example, I have a drum kit ready to go. So let's see here. It's not really a piano sound, but again, the sky's the limit, and I can use the Summit to control the sounds coming out of there. Even cooler, I could use an arpeggiator work on that to figure out exactly what kind of sounds I want, but you can see that, I mean, I could never play the drums that fast, and those samples are really fun when you start to automate them and do things faster than you could normally. And what if I run them through the filter and affect it with LFOs and chorus and reverb and things? Oh, I forgot. Let me go back to that piano sound, because this was a nice setting that I made, right? Now, all of a sudden, with these Animate buttons, I have access to things that I didn't before. So let's turn on the Animate buttons and see what I have it doing with the piano sound. So here's my piano again. Forgot to turn off the arpeggiator. Let's do that. This, by the way, is coming from an app by Korg called Gadget. It's available in the App Store. This is the Salzburg piano module within Gadget. Pretty decent sounding piano. It's not the most convincing. I think if I wanted a really hyper-realistic piano sound, I could use something like Keyscape or Omnisphere, or IK Multimedia has a couple of really nice piano apps. But this works well enough for me, and I'm familiar with the interface, so good enough. But now I've got these Animate buttons, and I thought, what could a piano use that could be a little bonus? How about some delay? So I thought that was pretty nice. What about button number 2? You guessed it, reverb. Nice. This mod wheel is already mapped to do things on the iPad. It's receiving these as regular MIDI information. So on this particular one, this is a pitch bend vibrato, which if I turn it up a little bit is kind of ghostly, especially with this reverb. Let's turn on the delay too, so we've got a really weird, vibey, wobbly piano sound. Let's do it. How about this? And of course, now the pitch bend is sending MIDI data, and rather than changing an oscillator on Summit, I'm doing whatever the iPad expects a pitch bend to do. In this case, it's a whole step rather than a full octave. You can configure that to be different on the Summit when you're controlling Summit's oscillators. You can also, in the iPad, configure what a pitch bend will do, but to be honest, when I'm playing piano, I'm not doing many pitch bends, and a little bit of vibrato is already pretty vibey. I like it a lot. Okay, so that's my first few sounds that I've conjured out of the Novation Summit. Do you like synthesizers? Let me know what kind of sounds I should try and make. And I'm looking for resources on how to play the keys better. So if you have any good piano tutorials or learning resources, I would love to hear them so that I can suck less. I'm swimming in the river of suck here, and now's the right time to do it because I'm not going on tour, so I might as well learn to play piano, and hopefully that will work its way into my songwriting, improvisation, live performances, etc. Probably not for a couple of years, but life is long, and I figure I'd better get started now. Matter of fact, you could too. If you want to learn a lesson of any of the instruments that I play, you want to pick up guitar, mandolin, fiddle, shoot me a message, and we can jump in and do some lessons over Skype or Zoom, because it's a great time to learn more instruments. That's what I'm doing every day. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you like this video, click the like button. If you click the bell, you'll get notifications on when I make a new video. And thanks to my patrons on Patreon for their continued support. I'll be posting some more demos and sounds on my Patreon page for some extended bonus footage. All right, thanks. Bye.